Hello, everyone. Welcome to Citizens Conversations. I'm your host for the night, Ron Booth. Tonight, we plan to have a candid conversation with the candidate for the District 5 City Council seat. And his name is Mr. Kalvin Bennet. And before we get started, I want to remind everyone that early voting starts this Monday, October 16th, and it runs through November 3rd. And of course, Election Day is on November 7th. And keep in mind, if you vote early, you may not have to stand in line. So with that, I'd like to introduce the chairperson of Citizens Conversations, Ms. Yoshina Colbert Bradford. Yoshina?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ron, and good evening, everyone. My name is Yoshina Colbert Bradford, and I'll be your moderator this evening. And as always, we go over the ground rules, which we don't have many here because it's such a relaxed environment. So number one, be respectful. Number two, keep your videos off so that way it won't distract the speakers, anyone who is talking or present at the moment. Number three, always stay on mute. And number four, be respectful. That's all we ask. We just want to have a nice conversation, relax, and get to know Mr. Kalvin Bennet, who is running for, as Ron has mentioned, District 5 City Council seat. Welcome, Mr. Kalvin Bennet. How are you this evening?
I am fine, and thank you for having me, Rashida.
Absolutely. Well, as always, we give the candidates 2 minutes to just give us an understanding of who you are. Just give us a little information about you, why you're running, and all that good stuff for 2 minutes. And then me and Ron immediately after will kick off and do questions, start the questions.
Okay, well, my name, like you said, is Kalvin Bennet. I was born in Charleston, South Carolina, raised in New York by single moms with 7 kids, God-fearing women and very disciplined women. Taught me a lot about charity, taught me a lot about empathy and caring for others. I moved here to South Fulton, or to Georgia, around 95, 94, 95. And I really, really loved the space that you guys have here in the South. Up north, everything is, elbow to elbow, small apartments, everything is rush. So, when I came out here to the South, I knew this was gonna be my home. I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, I'm a familiar face in the community, and I'm an advocate for the residents of the city. I'm a longtime business owner. I've had my business here in College Park, still South Fulton, for the past 30 years. Raised all my boys here. I raised a couple of boys through foster care here, and I'm proud of that. I've served on the code enforcement or code zoning board. I apologize. I served on the zoning board committee for a short time, and I served on the ethics committee for quite some time during the candidates that appointed me during their tenure in office. And I ran for office in the inaugural election. I feel like I'm a voice for my community. I think I could make a great advocate. I'm a reflection of the people that live in this community. I'm a senior citizen. I'm a Vietnam veteran. So I got a lot going on for me with a lot of life experience. And that's Kalvin in a nutshell.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Bennet.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting. There's a few questions I have for you already.
Okay.
I'm happy that you did come here to Georgia and you've made, Georgia and Atlanta your home. So pretty sure back in 94, you were in unincorporated. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And with you being in District 5, I guess that leads me into the first question.
Mm-hmm.
What have you seen in your neighborhood as far as changes, good or
You went mute the last part of your question.
Oh, what changes have you seen in your neighborhood specifically, good or bad? Once we became a city.
Some of the changes I've seen, the lack of choice in sanitation, take it or leave it. That was a change that was disruptive to a lot of folks, their finances, their comfortability, backdoor service for some seniors, was an issue. Not being responded to in a timely manner when it comes to speed bumps or the parking signs through these subdivisions. We're trying to deal with traffic, cars parked on both sides of the streets make it difficult for emergency vehicles to come through.
Mm-hmm.
Retention ponds, is a big issue, that's just sitting there. I can't say it's getting better because no one's doing nothing about it, but we have to address that issue somewhere along the way. As I knock on doors throughout our community, I'm hearing a lot about retention and detention ponds and who's responsible for it. I know Fulton County used to service it. They said they no longer do it. The city said it's not our problem. So it falls back on the homeowners and HOAs. So those are some of the things we have to deal with. Crime. Well, I wouldn't even say crime. I'm gonna say service, public service, police in particular. I don't see it getting better. I don't want to keep saying everything's getting worse because in my mind, it's like it's the status quo. And to give you a good example, Chief Meadows is being interviewed about the situation in Camelot by 11 Alive News. And one of the terms he used is like, well, that's the culture in Camelot. Murder is the culture in Camelot. And I thought that was an odd statement to make coming from a police chief because this is your watch. So it's things like that that just boils my blood, that gets me wanting to get into the fight to defend my community.
That's one thing I can definitely hear from you is your passion. Ron just came back on. That means he has a question. I'm gonna go ahead and let him fire off.
Thank you,
Hey.
Eugene. Mr. Bennett, first of all, impressive background. I appreciate that introduction that you gave. I like the fact that you're from Charleston. My daughter-in-law lives up there. It's from there.
Okay.
And a Vietnam veteran, all impressive. And raising those foster kids, all important stuff. And I appreciate
Yes,
that.
absolutely.
My question to you is I'd like for you to name two things about the city of South Fulton that you really like, as well as naming two things that you don't care so much about in the city of South Fulton.
I love location, location, location. I think we're in the best location if you want to live in Atlanta, 20 minutes from Six Flags, 10 minutes from downtown, 20 minutes from Truist Park, 10 minutes from a Falcons game. So location, location, location is what I sell when I'm talking about my city. That's one of the things I sell. Another thing I like is the fact that we're predominantly African American. That's for me, that's something to be so proud of. If we could just continue to move it forward. I guess we're taking small steps. I think it's not moving as quick as some of us want, but you see little glimpses here and there, where we're moving forward. I just want to make our people proud, here. Two things I don't like. You also asked?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Two things you do and two things you don't.
I hate doing this. Our body of representatives. I just don't think it's it's not a great functioning body. I don't want to talk about the individuals, but they have to work together. So I have to, talk about the body. I just think that I just don't feel like the passion for services there coming from that body of government that we have working in that's taking care of our city right now. Another thing I don't like, recreation. I don't think we've done anything over the past 6 or 7 years to push. Well, I think we could push a little bit harder because I'm not going to take away Tenard's program that he have, the Workforce Academy, and the midnight basketball. It may not be something that some people, who wants to play basketball, what that got to do? That has a lot to do with getting kids off the street. They could be out doing other things. And, so, I have to give credit where credit is due. But I do think if we are a people that care about our young, and we're trying to solve the problem of gang violence and why kids choose to go that route versus other routes, I think we could do more with park recreation and culture, training, and all that stuff. I even would go so far as to say we need to put some money in research, to research, our children and the problems that we're suffering as a community. We could help other municipalities deal with that situation. I mean, we know our own, and I just think that if we really cared, we would be doing more, investing more in those areas to try to get questions answered so we can come up with viable solutions to give our kids more healthy choices when it comes to making decisions.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. And I know you mentioned in your introduction that you have been owning your business for about 30 years. What type of business is that?
I do taxes and insurance.
Okay.
I grew up, like I said, in Harlem, and it was this little tax office, and he only opened up 4 days a week. And I always wondered, how do he pay rent all year long? And he's only open 4 days a week. But I see he's real busy. And I always said, I'm not a numbers man. I did my taxes one time. A couple of friends asked me to do their taxes. Before you know it, I looked up one year and I had done about 100 tax returns. And I looked at my bank
Wow.
account and I said, I think I might be on to something. And so I just kept growing that. I stayed focused on that and grew that business to be what it is today. And in the meantime, 10 years ago, when Obamacare was introduced, what we were just talking about, a friend of mine advised me that I might want to get into insurance since I had a database of people in my community that could benefit from Obamacare. And that's how I got into insurance. And that's where my passion now lies, enrolling folks into health insurance. Like I said, as we were talking earlier, I know three young men and one female, these specific cases, where if it wasn't for them enrolling in Obamacare, they may not be here today. They have serious health issues. Yeah. So, that's what I do though, taxes and insurance.
Absolutely. Now I know we've had several people join. Please, I see Mr. Snellings has his hand. You can go ahead and ask your question, but I just want to let everyone know, just raise your hand. We'll go ahead and call on you, get your questions answered while we have Mr. Bennet online.
All right. Hey, Kalvin. Question I have for you. In District 1, we had two businesses that applied for a liquor license. They were annexed into the city of South Fulton. They were in compliance with the Fulton County requirements, and they had a liquor license in Fulton County. They were asking for an exception to the ordinance that South Fulton has, granting them permission to have a liquor license, even though it was an adult entertainment exception. It was denied. In District 3 last night, there was a large conversation about the same thing, but this one business requested an exemption from the smoke-free ordinance, and it was approved. In your opinion, how would you handle something like that, where one business gets denied, but the other business gets approved? And it was approved unanimously.
Approved unanimously.
Yes. One was denied unanimously, the other one was approved unanimously.
How will I handle
should we be granting if we're going to grant an exception, should the exception be granted on a case-by-case basis, or should that exception be approved for everyone or denied for everyone?
Well, when you use the word exception, that's normally a case-by-case basis or extreme circumstances where a decision is made based on a set of circumstances. But for me, I mean, I can compare that, or not compare it, but relate that to the situation with the Easter egg hunt. That was canceled. And the reason why I say that is because when you have policies in place, it's in order for you to be granted permission to do this, you have to do A, B, C, and D. And during that A, B, and C, you should meet certain criteria that's laid out in the law or in the ordinance or in the application process. If you don't make those criteria, you don't get approved. If you make those criteria, you get approved. Now, exceptions should be listed. You know, okay, maybe an application was put in 10 hours after the deadline for application. And so the director has discretion to say yay and nay since it was past the deadline. That's an exception. When it comes to licenses, liquor licenses, and that type of thing, I don't think there should be a game of exception. This should just be, you know, this business, you know, based on, you know, the ordinance. If you qualify, if you're in the right area, if it's zoned for that type of business and you meet all the qualifications to open up your business, you should be granted the license. Now, I don't know what's behind, you know, the voting, you know, unanimously and they're being extreme, but I mean, I can only be consistent. For me, it's about the law. What does the paperwork says? And if it's ambiguity in it, we need to fix it. But that's just how I see that, Rashad. I don't know if I answered your question or not. But,
Yeah, I'm fine with that. But thank you.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So my other question is, I know that you said that you were on the zoning board. I
Mhm.
think there's another candidate running who was on the zoning board as well.
Mhm.
Can't think of his name.
Alvin Reynolds.
Okay, thank you for that. So on the zoning board, what exactly is the role of the board? What do you all do when you meet? Like what is the what authority do you have as a board?
I was on the board for a short period of time. They pulled me off of that to put me on the ethics board because they had a police officer that we felt in District 5 that would probably serve that position better, and I would serve better as on the ethics board. But the responsibility of someone sitting on the zoning board is to look at our zoning laws and to be sure that they're not being violated. That's pretty much the crust. What authority do they have? There is. I'm not going to speak too deep into that, right,
Yashina.
Yashina, because it's been a couple of years. Matter of fact, it's been about 4 or 5 years, you know, since I served on that board. So I can't remember the authority, but it's all governed by laws. You know, the authority that they have falls under state law and in the city charter. And people come before the board, ask for variances and all types of things, and it's up to that board to, you know, deny or approve. I know we had one situation where a young man was doing a medical building or a medical facility on Old National Highway, and he didn't have enough parking space. He wanted more parking spaces. They denied him, you know, but the reason they denied him is because the zoning laws were so old, there was hardly any traffic along Old National Highway at the time. So where you may require 20 parking spaces for every so many square feet of building space, now, you know, he was trying to say to the board, there's a whole lot more traffic going on now. But the board still denied him. But those are the type of things that, you know, the zoning boards go against, you know, just trying to stay in line with the land use plans, the ordinance of the city, the zoning ordinance. They put it all together and they just try to stay so we don't move outside of those parameters when we're building and, you know, building our communities. And again, I apologize for stumbling. You know, it's been some time since I've been on that board.
No, absolutely. I think you did a great job. Mrs. Snellings, you have another question?
Yes. In terms of now, we've seen over the last 2 years, the charter has been changed. When do you think who do you think should be the deciding factor if the charter is changed? Should that be something that the residents decide, or should that be left up to the city council and the state legislature? The state legislature. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think if we're being true to governing, the decision I make is the decision that my constituents would want. You know, so you say should the residents decide or should the council and the legislature? You know, I
Let,
think the
let,
resident.
let me clarify that. Should
Mhm.
that be a referendum on the ballot for the residents to decide? Or should the council and or the state legislature make that decision?
uh, if it was up to me, I don't know if I would want it to go on the ballot. You know, because my thing is, if you're representing a community, it's the voice of that community that determines. You know, if I was to recommend a change, it's probably because my constituents and I had discussed it, and we feel the change needed to be done. And as a body, I think that body should look at what feedback they're getting from their constituents and make a decision based on that feedback. So therefore, everybody will be in line with either the change, and if we push back, you know, if we give them reason as to why we're pushing back. But the bottom line is, ultimately, the constituents should have that last word. And like I said, I don't think it necessarily has to be a referendum, but I just think that citizens need to be involved, and council people like the one that's in office now needs to, you know, adhere to what his constituents or what constituents are advising or their sentiments about a certain issue.
All right,
So,
thank you.
yeah.
Looks like Ron may have a question. He just came off
Yeah.
mute.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take the next one. Thank you, Yoshina. So,
Absolutely.
Mr. Bennett, looking at the council, I watched several city council meetings, and I am personally embarrassed by how they conduct themselves. And there's even been a couple of hot mic moments where there's been profanity used. They were called out about that last night in a public comment. And I'm wondering what will happen when you're elected in January. What will you do to address the professionalism when you see it, when you see unprofessional behavior? Let me put it that way. How do you plan to address that representing District 5?
I mean, we gotta call it out. That's number one. You know, it's a way, a place, and a time for everything. You know, considering the council that we have and the behaviors of some, you know, I think it puts us in a bad spot for me to have to consider how I'm going to approach or handle someone else with kid gloves, so to speak. You know, I mean, we're dealing with grown people, you know, supposedly should be mature professionals. So, first of all, so that's where I'm coming from. I'm going to hold you at a standard. And I think the mayor, when decorum is broken, or there's folks out of order, which, you know, happens quite often in those meetings, you know, the mayor has to hold the reins, and we have to be supportive of the mayor. And I say the mayor, you know, I don't care who's sitting in the seat. I'm talking about the mayor. You know, it runs the meeting and should, you know, call that out. And we as council people should back him, especially when he's in the right, if somebody's out of order.
Thank you for that. And I'm also very pleased to hear that you plan to listen to and represent your constituents. I haven't heard those words a lot lately. So thank you for that. Yoshina?
Absolutely. So before I get to Mrs. Snellings again, I'm going to ask a question. In your first 90 days, if you take the seat, what do you plan to do in your first 90 days in office?
First thing, it's two things I want to do. The first thing, one of the first things I want to do is meet with my constituents and start forming committees. You know, I think it's important that we can't, I think when people elect folks into office, some people get the impression that Okay, now you in office, fix it. You fix it. And it just don't work that way. You know, it's like we need the involvement of the whole community to get things done. You know, and I just feel like people will be more engaged if you allow them to be involved in the process, whether it's economic development, parks and recreation, area beautification, you know, whatever it may be. I think one of the first things I'm going to do is pull some people together and start forming committees, you know, and prioritize what we want to start moving on. One of the other things I want to do is start a clean campaign. You know, just we need to spend money. I spend money on advertisement or campaigning, you know, on being clean is proud, or being proud is being clean. You know, a clean city is a healthy city. You know, we need to drum that home. I think once a city starts to take care of itself from an aspect of sanitation and just being proud about picking up litter and not littering in your neighborhood, I think that's the step in the right direction. And if we don't get people to change their attitude about how our city looks, we're going to continue to have the same problem. I don't care who you vote in the office. If the residents don't get involved in the process, we're going to just be stuck with where we are. So those are two of the things. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Absolutely. I didn't mean to cut you off. It looks like Mr. Snellings was first, and then I have Mr. Perry. Mr. Snellings, you took your hand down. Do you still have your question?
No, I'm going to let Ms. Perry go first.
Okay. Go ahead and unmute your. Okay, there we go.
Okay. Hey, so my question, Kalvin, nice to see you again. I don't know why my video won't start, but this is more of a your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, when I've gone to city council meetings, there's a lot of executive session going on. We're going to go into executive session. How do you feel about that? Do you think they go into executive session too often?
Do they go in too often? Maybe.
Yeah, executive session. I mean, is it even necessary?
I think it should be planned out a little bit better, and I definitely don't think it should be in the middle of a meeting. It's not fair to constituents for me to come in there for 4 or 5 o'clock, sit to 7 or sit to 5, 6:30, and then you go in executive session for 2 or 3 hours and expect us to sit out there. That's not fair. That's not fair to anyone. It doesn't help anyone. I would like to see executive sessions being scheduled, maybe outside of the meeting time, you know, work sessions and regular council meetings, a set time, and executive sessions should be held, you know, maybe after the meeting or before the meeting, but not in the middle of the meeting. I just think that that's unfair. So
I have
okay, thank you.
Thank you for that question. You know, that's one question we haven't asked any candidate. And I think that's important because I've been at those meetings.
yeah.
I've stayed, I know in the very beginning, oh my gosh, we would stay till like 11, 12 o'clock because we were trying to make sure something didn't get moved or motioned a certain way. But I absolutely agree. Thank you for that question, Mrs. Perry. Mrs. Snellings?
All right, so Kalvin, this was a follow-up to the question that Dr. Booth asked about the decorum in council meetings. So what happens if that decorum is not enforced? Because we know with the decorum ordinance, it says that the mayor is supposed to enforce it. But as a council person, what do you do if you know there's a decorum violation, but the mayor has not enforced it? How do you handle a situation like that?
I mean, well, we could start with having an ethics board. We could go complain to the ethics committee. You know, that's what the ethics committee is about. You know, keeping folks accountable for their behavior and their actions and be sure they're, you know, acting ethically. Other than that, I guess, but short of writing some legislation to penalize someone for being out of, for just being out of order or being disruptive, some form of punishment, legislatively, that is. But I would think that the council should have some sort of vote to censure or to, I don't want to use the word punish, but to censure a council person that's just constantly being disruptive or, out of order.
All right. And then the second part to my question was, if a resident is being disruptive in the meeting, the law enforcement will come and tap them on the shoulder or take them out of the meeting. Do you think it would be appropriate for them to do that with council members that get disruptive and disrupt the meeting?
Yeah. Why shouldn't it? I mean, what's good for the geese is good for the gander. If I expect you to act appropriately, why shouldn't I put those same, expectations on myself, especially being an elected official? Yeah, I think that's some of the problems that we're having. Because we're in office, we feel like we're able to act a certain way, or and it just shouldn't be that way. I can't tell my son don't talk to a woman that way when he see me cursing out women like on the cell and treating them like they're nothing. It's the same principle for me. So I do think if anybody is out of order and disrupting a meeting, they should be escorted out. You especially if you had your chance to say what you had to say and you're still pushing the issue, and you're being disruptive and stopping the work of the city, the people's business.
Absolutely. Mr. Ron, you have another question?
Yeah, I sure do. Mr. Bennett, as you know, there was a lot of questions and uproar, including from myself, about the sanitation solid waste program rollout. And I wanted to get your opinion on what you thought about that rollout and what you think that could have been done better to get it out without all the controversy.
Well, first and foremost, I think that the council should have worked more closely on it, as opposed to one or two council people pushing it through as if they were the city manager. That's my feelings about it. The decision was made, I think it was made under false pretenses. And I've listened carefully to the rationale behind why the decision was made to have one provider. People were complaining about some people were paying more than others. So that's not fair. You could go ahead and rewind the tape and you will hear that statement coming from a council person. In my mind, that's fair business. If I don't like how much I'm paying over here, I could go somewhere else where it's cheaper. So to me, that's a fair market. If that was the premise, which was stated, that was one of the reasons why the price wasn't fair across the board. And some people were complaining that their service wasn't up to par. Again, if your service isn't up to par with one provider, you have 5 other providers to choose from. So for me, it's like, this isn't making any sense. Now I do support having our own sanitation department. I do. I just don't know if that was the right timing. I don't think that the rationale or the intent was there. I felt like we should have created a customer service or billing center first and started handling the billing for all of the providers, and slowly start rolling it in and letting them, as opposed to, just, okay, on 21 days or 90 days from now, we're going to have one provider and everybody's going to, I just thought that was unfair to the city. As you can see, they didn't think about senior citizens at all. They not near one of them. I didn't hear anything about backdoor service. fixed incomes or anything while they were discussing this rollover. It wasn't until some ladies, Marcia Steele and Ellen Mapp, is two that I could call their names because they were loud with "you're not treating us seniors right." So those are some of the problems I see, see with the rollout.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. I do have a hand from Mrs. Perry again. I'm going to call on Mrs. Perry. And just to mention, if you don't want to raise your hand, speak on mic, we understand. You can definitely type your question in the chat and we'll read it out loud. Thank you, Ms. Perry.
That's kind of your
All right. Hey, Kalvin. So my question, my next question is, I recently heard, and I don't know if this is true, I hadn't done any fact checking, that the city manager has a staffing agency. And she's, since she's been there, she has fired quite a few employees and is staffing those positions with contractors within her staffing agency. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But when you're on the city council seat, is that something that you feel you all should address? And if so, how would that, what can y'all do about that if it is true?
Of course, I think that's something that needs to be addressed. I was a contractor for many years prior to doing what I do now. And that's just not a practice that I've witnessed, whereas you're contracted to do a service and you're using your business on the side to supply services to that organization. If it's an agreement between the city and the city manager that she's allowed to do that, so be it. It's probably not something that I would agree to. You probably wouldn't get a yes vote from me. But my thing is, as long as we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's, the money is being taken care of, the job is being done. I think one of the concerns I would have is temporary employees or interim employees versus permanent employees. That's something that need to be looked at. We don't need to be, staffing our whole city with interim employees from Jay Blow's, temporary service. I definitely don't agree with that. So if that's the road we're going down, that needs to be reversed. I get the sentiment, the suspicion. I get it. And like I said, it's not a practice that I would support. But again, if the contract allows her to do it, which obviously it does, then we need to talk to this attorney and ask him, who put the contract together, man? And why does she have so much leeway as to who she could bring in here? And what's the cutoff number for the number of temp employees that we're going to have, on our payroll versus permanent employees?
Absolutely. I guess I can only see that being useful if, I know we have a high turnover in the city, period.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do not have those positions filled, I can see where a need may be there. However, I think Mrs. Perry raised a great question on that one. That's something that I didn't even know. But thank you for that. And not to say, again, like she said, not sure if it's true. We did not fact check it. However, Mr. Snellings?
So this is just more of a comment. It was stated in the council meeting last night that there's like 21 temp employees that are coming from various different agencies. So I just thought it was worth mentioning that since we were talking about this.
All right, absolutely. Thank you. And you said there were about 20 different employees?
21 different temporary employees that came from various different agencies.
Okay. And were they all in like one department or different departments?
Just all throughout the city.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Mr. Bennet, I do have another question for you. So I know you mentioned clean campaign. I think that's that is the first I've heard, but I also think that's a great idea because I'm heavy into real estate, and I think beautification is one thing that helps us to have a foundation of everything to build standards on. So how would you kind of structure your clean campaign? What would that look like?
Well, like I said, first we start with a committee,
Mhm.
and then we got to find some money, because there'll have to be flyers. There may have to be some radio spots or social media campaigns.
Mhm.
We may have to have street captains, so to speak, or neighborhood captains that will be responsible for reporting, or just keeping a close eye out on how their streets looking or the neighborhoods looking, updating the community on a regular basis on, where we're at. Like I said, for me, this is something that we have to sensitize people to, because we always raised to keep a clean house and a clean. I don't have all that stuff in my front yard. I don't like trash in my yard. So we pretty much have it when it comes to our personal space. We need to start just going outside of our personal space and just being deliberate with taking more pride in how our community looks. And so it's active, and like you said, it could be challenging because when you start telling us to do work, when you start saying let's get up Saturday morning to go pick up garbage, hey, oh well, I got something to do, So I mean, it's the mind with us. Everything is is changing the mindset. That's how I see that. But like I said, it all starts with that committee and getting people involved to take lead roles.
Absolutely. Mr. Ryan?
Yeah. Mr. Bennett, I know you raised a couple of sons, and that's impressive and very difficult. I'd like to know what your plans are, or have you given any thought to any mentoring programs for our young people? As you know, there are a lot of young people running around getting into trouble, breaking into cars and whatnot. Do you have any thoughts or plans for any types of mentoring programs going forward?
Well, number one, I would expand the programs that's in place, because they seem to be, doing some good. They're doing some good. I would expand those programs. One of the things when I ran on the first inaugural election that I ran in, I had suggested PAL, Police Athletic League. And I just don't get it, man. We say we want community policing. We say we want police to work closer with the community, but we don't do anything to promote those type of programs. So I just think the police athletic league is a good start for young kids, because they haven't formed that opinion too much about police officers. They still have where you could get to them and, change their opinion. With our older kids, hey, Ron, short of raising them and making the personal sacrifice, we have to ask them those questions. Because, I could sit here and say, well, they need jobs, they need training, they need more security at school so they won't be bullied into joining the gang because they feel they need protection. There's a whole lot of issues or a whole lot of moving parts when it comes to these kids and what they're dealing with these days. And a lot of them join gangs. I'll give you a good example. One time I had about 6 kids, and I was coaching basketball. So that's how it wasn't like I was out I want kids to come to my house, and I was coaching basketball, and a lot of these kids have family problems. So, I just was in a situation, fortunate enough to have a big enough home to assist some of those parents, and some, went to jail or whatever the case might have been. And one of them came to me after he finished high school and everything, and I asked, did you ever join a gang? He said, yeah. I said, you was in a gang in my house? He said, yeah, coach, I was in a gang. When did you join the gang? Well, you remember that day? He pointed out the day. And I asked him why. He said he's having issues. you know, and he either had to do that, or he felt that if he joined them, he would feel safe. Because yeah, and that's the crust of our. So it's easy to say don't do this, but when someone's harassing you at school and telling you what they're going to do to you if you don't do this, that, and other, and you don't have nobody to call on, you'll probably join the gang also. So we could sit here and talk about, well, they need to stop that. It ain't that easy. It's not that easy. And that's why I say, I could give the symptoms and I could be empathetic to what they're going through, but jobs, training, mentoring. I hate we don't have boot camps like we did when we were smaller. I hate we don't have like reform schools where we could get them and put them in a place where they're forced to learn discipline. You have to be disciplined, and you ain't got to be jailed. We just going to treat you like a man and show you how to be a man. We just got to take control, but we don't have it because they'll say we don't have the funding for it. But we got a $200 million budget. That's what I'm saying. For a city that look like us, we should be stepping out of the box. We should be stepping out of the box and making sacrifices. Yeah. So that's the best.
I agree. I completely agree.
Miss Perry, thank you for waiting. You have your hand up.
Yeah, and I'm about to go into my son's birthday dinner, so I'm gonna make this my last question. And thank you so much, Kalvin. As you know, I'm a resident and homeowner at Camelot Club Condominium, and which is in District 5. And I know that there are maybe one or two other HOAs in that district that have what's considered like rogue boards, but Camelot's the only one I'm sure that has the crime rate that it has. As a city councilman of District 5, what would your role, what responsibility, or what role would you take once elected to step in those, not only Camelot, but the other HOAs as well?
Well, the key word that you mentioned was rogue. That's the first thing we have to address, and like I spoke to a couple of Camelot owners, my role is to sit down and just advise the property owners to organize, to come up with a HOA, legally recognized with a covenant that you all can agree on. Majority of just like they said, 60%, 70%, whatever that number is, of participation to create a HOA that is recognized by state law, and then come up with a financial plan. How are you going to collect assessments? How are you going to approach renovation? What steps are you going to take? What's your first step? Cleaning up the property first, code enforcement, getting everybody. I mean, just give us a plan. That would be my thing, because the bottom line is, and this, it's not the city's job to fix the problem, but it's our job to keep our city safe. Yeah. So if we got property owners, do what you got. You gotta take responsibility for your property. You have to take responsibility for your property, because if you don't, as a group, now you're asking the city to come in and fix the problem for you. And I don't think that's what anybody wants. We want assistance from the city. We want code enforcement to do their job. We want the police to come and do their job. We want public works to do their job. But we, like I say, we have to do our job as property owners. We have to organize, be sure we got a HOA, a strong HOA, and we have a plan to get out of this mess. And that's what I see as far as any neighborhood when it comes to, trying to, move your neighborhood forward, whether it's crime or renovation, blight, or whatever the case might be. It starts with the ownership. Now, if ownership organized, and any assistance I could give them, I'm there for them with any assistance that I possibly could give.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I have to say that was a good answer. That was a great answer. Absolutely. And if it gets to a point the owners can't do anything, then yeah, legally others have to step in. Well, we're like 10 minutes away. So I want to just go ahead. I know time went by fast. So I want to know, are there any additional questions out there? Are there any citizens who has a question or has not had a question answered who would like to go ahead and get your question asked? Because I want to make sure that I give Mr. Bennett his time for his closing remarks. Mr. Snelling.
All right, thank you. You have mentioned that you served on the ethics board. Residents have submitted ethics complaints, and there's been like no response to the complaints, and there's really been no action on the complaints. How do you address that as a council person?
I think that's egregious, to be honest with you, because without the ethics board, there is no accountability for no one, because that's what keeps the council in check. That's what keeps, employed the management in check. If you see something in the charter being violated, you file an ethics complaint. And if there's no ethics committee to take up your complaint, what good is filing an ethics complaint? I heard Dr. Raul make that statement the other night. He said, well, if you have a problem, go and file an ethics complaint. It's there for you. Oh, well, really? Okay, it's there for me to file it, but what actions where's the active committee? There is none. And I don't know why, because from what I heard, Councilman Reeves filled that last seat that they were waiting to be filled some time ago. So why that board isn't moving forward or not active, I couldn't tell you. But that would definitely be something that you would hear me screaming about every week when I'm sitting in that up there in that council meeting. We need to do what we need to do, and we need to have that ethics committee active and doing its job.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Ron, did you have a question before we?
Well, it was more of a statement.
Okay.
And so, Kalvin, I appreciate your answers, and you come off as sincere, and you're easy to talk to. And you said one thing that I've been concerned about when it comes to city council members all along, which is they don't talk to their constituents and listen even less. So I'm going to hold you to that. If I was in District 5, you'd have my vote. I can tell you that with complete certainty.
Ooh, thank you.
But still, my outside role is to hold people accountable. And so I'm going to count on you once you get in that seat to do the things that you talked about tonight. I liked what I heard, and I hope that you'll do that, and we will be watching. So I just wanted to let you know that. And I thank you for everything that you said tonight.
Yeah,
that's all I had, Yoshina.
I appreciate
Absolutely. And Mr. Bennett, so we're 6 minutes away before we close out. We like to start on time and end on time. So with the last at least 4 to 5 minutes, just give us an overview. You can close us out. Tell us more about how we can get in contact with you, how we can help you, all about your campaign. What's your platform? I mean, roll us out.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, my platform is pretty much at the top of my list is bringing integrity and accountability to the seat in District 5. As I walked around as I went knocking on doors and talking to residents, and even prior to campaigning, I was hearing a lot about promises made and promises not kept in our district. And that was a steady theme prior to me making the decision to run. As a matter of fact, it was that constant theme that pushed me to run, because everyone was folks are telling us one thing and not doing what they say they're going to do. And so I said, well, I normally do what I said I'm going to do, so I guess I'll do pretty good in this position because I'm about my word, And I think being a reflection and the voice of the community you serve is so important. I think it's so important that people see you on a regular basis you know, because this is local government. This ain't no national position where you fly to DC every week or whatever. You know, this is your neighborhood. You know, and I eat in my neighborhood. I work in my neighborhood. You know, what's the best word? I guess I could say I interact with my neighbors. You know, I'm a part of my neighborhood. I've always been that way. Like I said, not to say New Yorkers are neighborhood people, but you know, there's a lot of folks in a small area when it comes to city living. So I'm used to being around people. I'm used to, you know, doing things as a group. I'm used to block associations, working to keep the block clean. I'm used to working to keep, you know, crime down in our neighborhoods and that type of thing. And that's pretty much what I want to see in my community, man. I just want to see more community involvement, you know, us doing more things together. You know, back in the day, we used to hear kids playing out on the streets and you know, so and so. Now we see kids playing out on the street. We get on Ring and talk about they out there in front of my house, what they getting ready to do. Come on, man, they out there playing. What do you want them to do? What we're getting so and I'm not gonna blame it on COVID because I seen this prior to COVID. You know, politicians tell well, them kids need to stop hanging out in the subdivision. They need to find somewhere to go. They don't need no basketball court up there. It's going to bring other kids. Well, what do you want them to do? So this is my thing with changing the mindset of community, bringing it back to what it used to be. Because we all want to live safe. We all want to live healthy. We all want to live secure. You know, and knowing your neighbors is one way to get there. Doing things with your neighbors is one way to get there. You know, I mean, I got some plans, like for instance, besides public services, you know, trying to work to push the city to be more responsible to constituents when they call with issues, you know, when they call with code violations that they be listened to and action is taken. You know, like my house right now, 2 doors up, we had squatters. I have to give it to Officer Wilson, got him out quick. He got him out quick. I have to give it to him. I didn't know the laws changed in Georgia and how they could address or deal with squatters. But they left all the garbage out in front of the house. You know what I'm saying? So it's things like that where you're like, I think it's important that we focus on our public services, and that include police, you know, showing up once in a while when we call, at least a little bit more, you know, show us something, put a camera, something at the front exits of some neighborhoods where we could catch license plates or something so we could feel a little bit safer. You know, it's just little things that I would like to see us push, you know, to just make our lives a little bit more, you know, enjoyable in our neighborhoods, in this city, you know, and that's pretty much the foundation of what I'm trying to do when it comes to representing District 5. You know, I'm not gonna sit up here, well, I'm gonna bring all this development in, because we got Artie to handle that. You know, I may talk to him about it, but that's what he do. Economic development. They know all the science behind it. You know, all we gotta do is be sure they stand within the plans, our land use plans, and they're not going outside of it. You know, so my thing is to just try to enhance the lives of the residents, man. That's pretty much what it's about. You know, so I could run off a whole list of stuff that I would like to do. I will say this. I will say that I would love to initiate us getting a housing authority. Now, I know they spoke about a hospital authority last night, which I thought was great. You know, they missed out the piece about how we're going to fund it, you know, because, you know, it's easy to say we're going to get the hospital, we're going to give. They was talking a lot last night about giving. They'll give us. Yeah, but somewhere along the line, we got to pay for those services, or else we're going to be in the same situation, you know, where Wellstar left us. They can't supply the service because nobody has insurance. So we need to focus on teaching people about health, purchasing, you know, that's something that like I said, it always comes back to us. You can get all the elected officials you want, but it's all about the individual and teaching the individual what's important for our community. It's important for you to have health care. It's important for you to have insurance. They got insurance now to make it affordable for you. So now if we get numbers up 60, 70% of this population with health insurance, I think they'll be breaking down the walls trying to put a hospital over here. You know, so it's about us. But the housing authority, I would like that because we don't have no way to protect our seniors. I'm sorry. I
It's
went over,
okay. You did. You did all 6 minutes. But
when you
that's
said
good.
6 minutes, I was like, oh, I got it. Okay, Lord.
No, you did good. And I say that because I can hear your passion. I really can. I think that's one of the things that we really need. And that's just so to close it out. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for your time. Thank you for even getting the courage to run. I say this all the time, you know, all the elected officials who were there, they had to start. Some of them did not have experience. So no one has the experience. They have to get the training and to get the experience once they get in. But absolutely, it was a joy to have you. And I want to thank all the residents and the citizens for coming on this evening. Thank you for your time and thank you for participating. Ron?
Thank y'all for
Yeah,
having me.
I just wanted to quickly close things out. I want to remind everyone once again, early voting starts Monday, October 16th, and it runs through November 3rd. And election day is on November 7th. And regardless of who you vote for, please vote. And the last thing I'd like to say is that if Mr. Bennett will hang on for a little while, those of you that don't want to ask questions on tape, you can ask them after I stop the recording, which will end right now. Thank you.